This will be an in-depth conversation with regards to Popyeni Kaxuxwenas' book, Let's Work. This book that Popyeni wrote is an in-depth discussion with regards to customer services. So I invite you today to engage with us as we invite not only our author, but our various guests as we engage and go through the chapters of this book to have this conversation written in the Namibian context. I'm also going to invite you, because we're going to do things a little bit differently this morning, we're going to invite you to engage with us on the Let's Work social media pages, where you can add to the conversation. We would love to hear from you with regards to any comments you want to make, any questions you may have to any of our various guests who will be with us this morning, as well as the author. And especially if you've read the book yourself, please add your voice this morning as we engage through the pages with me, Laimi Elago, your host for this morning. Welcome. Welcome back to Through the Pages. My name is Laimi Elago and I am your host this morning as we have an in-depth conversation about the book written by our author, Popyeni Kaxuxwenas, Let's Work, Growing Beyond a Job Description, a book that is about adopting a new narrative in Namibia's working culture, which is a culture of hard work and the overall overarching theme of customer service. So this morning, I'd like to welcome our author, Popyeni Kaxuxwenas, this morning. Can you just give us a short little introduction?
Thank you, Laimi. My name is Popyeni Kaxuxwenas, and I am the author of the book. Thank you for having me.
And next to Popyeni is Karen Powell. Karen, please give yourself an introduction for those who may not know you.
Thank you. I'm Karen Powell. I am a creativity and prosperity coach, and I help people to clarify and create their greatest vision for themselves.
I love that. I love that, a creativity coach. And on the other side, we have Varanas. Varanas, can you go ahead and give us an introduction?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Name is Varanas Shinyemba. I am a foreign exchange dealer, corporate dealer at First Rand RMB Namibia.
And next to Varanas, we have the very lovely Benita. Benita, good morning. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, good morning. My name is Benita Nakambo. I'm a communication expert. But more than that, I'm also the president of the Children of the Liberation Struggle, which Popyeni falls in that category.
So thank you so much for introducing yourselves. We're going to go ahead and have this conversation. And I'm inviting everybody to join us. We are live on Facebook as well. I want this to be an engaging environment where we can have this conversation. And I think I love the fact that this book is obviously written in Namibia, for Namibians, in the Namibian context, and especially with the overarching theme of customer service. So let's start there. Because when I read the book, for me it was really about the pursuit of excellence, and it was based on your personal journey. So let's start with customer service, and let's give it a definition before we even start anything else.
Yeah. I think firstly, when I wrote the book, the first thing that I wanted to do was to write about customer service in Namibia. And the reason why that is because there's a narrative that goes around that customer service in Namibia is just horrible, it's just bad. But when I went around, I tried to do some research to find out if there's any literature on customer service in Namibia specifically, because all the books that you go through are mostly foreign written. So the concept of customer service is not really Namibian, it's more from a foreign perspective. And for some reason, I couldn't find any. I'm not saying there is none. If you are there and you wrote a book, I just didn't find it yet. So, and he gave me this idea to just start writing about it. So I started making notes, and later on, it turned out to be that I had more than enough pages, or like 200 pages. The concept of the book is basically the customer service itself is just service. You know, it's just, there's a concept of customer service being I'm looking for to buy water, and you providing the water to me. Customer service is done then, but then in the aspect of how do I build a relationship with you? And how did you sell me that water? That aspect of service, I think that's what's missing in Namibia. The experience is what I felt like is missing that I needed to talk about. So in a nutshell, so I literally wrote the book from my life story, where I am, just to introduce you, who's this person writing about this book? And then it takes you through to talk about now different angles of what I thought what customer service is.
Karen, your definition of customer service, what would that be?
Well, I think one of the reasons I'm here maybe is because I come from America. I've been in Namibia for a long time, but you know, I think when you go to America, if you've ever been to the States, you walk into a shop, you walk into a restaurant, and you really feel welcome. You feel like, so we're just known for, I think Americans are known for really good customer service and really going beyond what people are just there for, but really trying to make you feel comfortable and welcome. And you know, we value you. We want your money, but we want your satisfaction as well. So I see customer service as really, we want to give you what you want, but we want to give you more than that, and we want you to come back. And it strikes me every time I go to back to the States, it strikes me how I feel when I walk into a store, or if I'm like carrying a bunch of clothes, I'm you know, maybe shopping for clothes, and then the sales lady will come up to me and say, can I take those for you, and can I put them into a room for you? Or if I'm in the shop, you know, just buying groceries, it's just a different feel where you really feel taken care of. Like, I want to come back here, and I want to give you my money.
Having experienced that in the States, do you feel that have you experienced it here before, where you feel complete satisfaction?
You know what, I really notice it when I do. And this is the thing about Namibian customer service. I think that the potential, and I just love that you wrote the book, because just saying that the potential is here. All you have to do is just use some skills, use some tools to really capitalize on it. And the people, the companies, the businesses that start to really use customer service and be very conscientious about it, they are going to soar. And especially in this time where people are struggling and businesses are struggling, you can add this ingredient in, and really you can get so much out of it. You can really stand out as a business.
Yeah. Veronis, I think customer service is obviously a very loaded term in Namibia. There's never anybody who will have like a neutral experience and not react to the word customer service. It will either be very, very negative, and I think that's the populist opinion. What has been your experience of customer service in Namibia?
Pretty much the same as, you know, I think customer service and is synonymous to partnership and building relationships. The fact that in Namibia, when you recognize it, you know, then it hits home. You know, I've often been in situations where you're like, wow, I can't believe this happens in Namibia. Somebody just served me well. I'd like to come back. Or you go back, you'd go back to the person and say, wow, thank you so much for your service. My experience in Namibia is so terrible, it's so bad. I think the general view is that people just want to be treated the way they would, you know, expect to be treated, you know? So defining customer service in Namibia is so difficult, like you rightly said, because you know, the different experiences, the fact that we don't quite understand it, it's so broad, and the fact that you literally have to recognize it to know, it almost like, you know, you get this shock, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to me. So yeah, I think it goes a long way, and the fact that when Popyeni wrote this, it gives room to just understand and see what are the missing sort of items that can help grow customer service. I mean, like your experience, Karen, in America, you said, you know, people come out, when you go into a shop, everybody's all over you, they want to serve you. In Namibia, when you walk into a shop or something, people are like, why is he here? Or, you know, what do you want? You know, and that's quite disturbing.
Yeah.
So for us, it's all about, especially in my space, it's all about forging relationships, wanting the client to come back, because I mean, Namibia is so small. There's so much competition. The pie is little for everybody. So if you can make it work for your client, it's guaranteed that they're going to come back.
So I think we're all in agreement that at the end of the day, customer service is what gives a business or an establishment its edge. Benita, I have to ask you then, if you were to go to an establishment or a company for anything, a product, a service, and I say to you, what customer service experience would you like to have and walk away with?
Perhaps kindness. kindness, gratitude for me picking you to drop my hard-earned money, and appreciation. You see, there's one thing that I think it was already said here, but I just want to add on to that to say a lot of individuals don't appreciate a customer coming into their shop. They forget that. They forget the elements to how far I went to get what I'm bringing to your shop. You see, you don't know if I had to stay up to midnight to get that money so I can bring it to you. You don't know if maybe my dad or my mom passed, God forbid, and that I just got this money and I'm still uncomfortable that I'm using it, but I'm bringing it to you. You see, the choice to decide where I drop my money is up to me, and I pick you, and you still treat me as if you deserve my money more than you. Do you understand?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. And that has been the
Completely.
most terrible thing about customer service. And for Popyeni to write about it and bring it out, it's actually quite. You see, you kind of realize that, oh my God, I'm not being demanding. This is what it is. This is how the sphere is, and somebody has realized that something needed to be done. And the great thing about it is that he has been in that industry. He has served us, some of us, when he was in that industry, and he himself has realized that his colleagues were not doing the job as well as they did. So it coming from the perspective of somebody who was serving, I think it's brilliant, and we appreciate as clients.
Yeah. So having read a book, it's very short, but it packs such a punch. And for me, Popyeni, we discussed this before, that as Namibians, we complain about customer service, but rarely do we talk about it. Rarely do we become very constructive about it. And one of the opening lines in chapter 1 was where you said your customer service journey began with your childhood. That really took me back. Because you think customer service is a skill, you go to, and I'm a customer service analyst or whatever, and it's a skill that I pick up later on in life, but very rarely do people say, this is something I've learned from childhood, like as if it's a characteristic or a muscle that you build. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think it is definitely. I think even from an African culture perspective, I think, there are certain norms that they are not written. You don't get called for a meeting to say, this is how we should treat strangers, or this is how you should, as a lady, this is how you should receive a guest, or this is how you should shake hand with somebody, for example. Those are just norms. But, and what I find interesting is that though we come from whatever background, as soon as we come to the city, there's sort of like we detach. We sort of detach ourselves from our cultural norms of treating people, and I felt and because of that, somehow the question is really why? Why is it that? Is it because we are easily influenced? Because and then when we come to the city, for example, to an urban area, and we get taught on customer service, the things that are being taught in books, in schools, at universities, is not what we went through at home. So it becomes foreign to us. We are now forced to mimic. We're now forced to remember. We're now forced to, what's in the book, instead of saying, what, let me apply how I'm treated or how people are treated at home. So I write a little bit about that. The aspect of me writing about my life story is really, I wanted the reader, when you read the book, not only know about Popyeni, but you need to have a reflect. I needed to reflect on your life as well. Say, perhaps this is also, what Popyeni went through is what I went through as well. Can I change my mindset? And offer the service that is based on my background, based on my culture, instead of saying, what, in French, do as the French say.
That's one thing that really surprised me about this book, was that you brought so much in of yourself and about yourself, and we did get to learn more about you and who you are and where you came from. And one of the things that we said, the theme of the book, was that there was in it a lot of childhood trauma with what you went through, being born in exile, and Benita, you can relate.
Yeah.
So I have to ask this question because I don't think that's a conversation we have in Namibia, is that those born in exile, being separated from your parents, being taken to a different country, then having to come back to Namibia, for me, that seems like trauma.
Yeah.
How much of that is even a conversation with children who went or were born in exile and then brought back to just acclimatize? And it seems there was no counseling that took place?
Yeah.
No,
No counseling.
no counseling.
You see, this is one element that we've been fighting, if I say, not literally, but yeah, we've been trying to engage government for the past 10 years to say, perhaps I must say this. When I went to university, I told my dad that I needed to do social science. And he said, why? Because my dad is an engineer, my sister, doctor, and all those things. But they came here when they were young. I had been already indoctrinated in exile. So for me to find sanity, to be fine, I needed some sort of a subject that was social science, psychology, sociology, so I can understand this identity crisis that I had to go through. So I insisted that I do social science. I ended up with my political science and informations, and currently still gauging into those at master's level. But the idea was identity crisis that I was experiencing at that time, and understood myself to a point where when I came to dealing with living, I was born in Angola, grew up in Zambia, and then coming eventually to Namibia, new place that I've never been, I had to come to term, I had to tell the conscious and the self-conscious to find a balance and say, must accept what is given, and then we live with that. But most of these kids have not gone through that kind of self-psychological analysis because they have also not been given an opportunity to sort of gauge into that arena. I had to do self-analysis because Varsity also created, at psychology level and sociology level. Now, what I find quite interesting with Popyeni, or perhaps before I say Popyeni, is that many other kids couldn't comprehend, especially those from Germany, from Czechoslovakia. It's really, really difficult. And then you have those that were in Zambia, Angola, that came back and the parents were not there, so they were dumped in the north, So eventually when they're grown, they came to Windhoek to attempt do things, but psychologically they are not at that level. So that's why you find children of the liberation struggle always tend to be in solidarity with each other because somehow they understand each other, they're not rooted into the identity of Namibia. But what was interesting and that what made me, not drop Pio's book when I was reading it, because the idea is that, okay, I'm going to read it, I'm going to put it down, I'm going to come back to it. But I read it, and I couldn't stop and I was crying. And there's one thing that Dubisani, Professor Dubisani always says, like, for you to read, to understand the perspective of the book that you are reading, you need to first understand the person who's writing, because always a person is writing from a certain perspective. And I didn't even have to go to the back of the book. He brought it out. That was his beginning, to say, this is me and this is my position, which worked very well, because at some point started crying. He went through all this dramatic event without any kind of position that I went through, but yet he prevailed and said, you know what, irregardless, I'm going to be the best person that I can be. And I remember vividly when you said, I slept at the mall. I've never cried for my mother, and I slept at the mall for the first time. I slept at the mall and I cried. But the next day, this friend of mine came and said, you went to Saddle. And somebody then said, no, we are not offering, but Spur is offering, and that's how he got. And I said, where does he get this, And most of us, they don't have that. They didn't have that. The self-motivation, the self-determination to go against all the odds, that has been amazing, you see. And that's what I love about it, because he then proves that it doesn't matter what difficulties, what situation you find yourself in, you can overcome all hardship. He has just proven that, which was really, really beautiful.
Karen, this is based on what Benita says, when you've gone through that kind of trauma, you're a teenager, you're a self-funded student, finding your own accommodation. How do you not allow your past or your traumatic experiences to define you so that you continue on this path, to not let it defeat you? And so you continue, especially with you, Karen, working with people to find their purpose. How do you not allow such traumatic experiences to become who you are going forward?
I was looking for that in the book because I wanted to find the magic answer to that. Because Popyeni did it. I mean, I also was crying during the first few pages of that book. I couldn't sleep. I thought, oh, let me just start this book before I went to bed. I couldn't sleep that night because I mean, I'm the mother of a 19-year-old daughter. I can't imagine. I was thinking of you at 17, you know, sleeping at the mall and everything you'd been through even before that. I was just sort of like, wait a second. I've known you, but I didn't know the story about you. So I couldn't sleep, crying, and I'm like, I couldn't put the book down because I wanted to find what is that magic thing that he figured out. And some people figure it out, and sadly some people don't figure it out. But I do believe that every single person has the ability to do what Popyeni has done and use their past, use whatever you've been through, whatever kind of trauma. And of course there's trauma on, you know, such a big spectrum. But we've heard stories, and you can go through and research stories of people who have gone through very traumatic things and come out the other end and then become a force for good in the world and actually use their history, use their experience and their trauma as part of their gift. And I think that's where, there's another book, please, in you, because I want you to unpack this amazing, well, it's probably difficult, you know, to go into that, but there's so much in there that I think could help people who have gone through such trauma and thought, how can I get out of this? I'm helpless. I don't see a way out. You're showing, you know, have it a guide, the way out of, and the way into your purpose, the way into the impact that you want to make. I mean, you're literally using your story and your experience, your trauma, your hardships to help other people. And that is really the bottom line to using the things that we've been through for good.
I think to add to that, I want to add a little bit, based on what Benita also said, that, you know, when we came from abroad, you know, I read my friend's book, Pioneer by Ndolipula. He also talked about how we grew up. And there were really three things that were supposed to happen when Namibia got its independence. You know, you're in the bush. You must understand, when we were in Angola, we were going to take up as the next soldiers.
Yeah.
They were preparing us that you're going to be a soldier. You're going to fight for the liberation of Namibia. And this is a land, number one. We don't know of Namibia. We just know that there's a Namibia somewhere.
And our parents came from
And
there.
our parents came from there. And we've been taught every day. So it's indoctrinating your mind. You sing liberation songs about independence. As a boy growing up, crying was not even crying for what? No, it's not an option. When you cry, others even make fun of you. Like, are you a girl or what? So even crying was not something that you do.
So you're taught how to be a soldier, like that
Exactly.
age, that is what you're taught.
Yes.
So you come back home and then you have to reassociate into society, but then you have the mentality or the indoctrination of a child soldier.
Yes. So now what happens is that now you come back, okay? So the government, what I think, it was written in Ndoli's book, and he talks about that, the 3 R's that were supposed to happen, which was repatriation, reparation, and rehabilitation. The 2 happened.
Very late also. Very late.
Yeah, so the 2 really happened in terms of, yes, repatriation happened. Reparation happened it happened, but you know,
Not fully, yeah.
not fully, but the Ministry of Veteran Affairs happened, so they had to repatriate people. So rehabilitation was really something that was missing. And I looked at that because even our parents, I understood it from a very young age. I don't know why, but I understood it from a very young age that my parents also, they needed rehabilitation. So the way they were treating you, it was almost as if we were back in the bush. You are a boy, you must wake up at 6 in the morning and clean the yard. Because back then, we used to wake up around that time and go march, and go train, and go sing songs. You waking up with the sun up was almost, what's going on? So I had to understand that easily. So to please your parents, you did it. Now, the other thing is also, like Benita mentioned, the children from the struggle, because we couldn't really identify ourselves with the Namibian kids that were born here, we stuck together. And because of that, now there's a difference. As friends also, now you have, your one friend is a minister's child. He comes from a good home.
Yeah.
He's got the latest Jordans.
Oh my goodness.
The other one is, maybe he comes from Katutura, for example. So now, then there's this thing of you are a town boy.
Cluster
you are a
stratification.
It was really clustered. And then your true friend that you grew up with is in the north somewhere. He has no idea about the north. Imagine now you're taken to the north and you're told, go and take care of animals. But remember, there is no rehabilitation.
This is a conversation. And Benita, as president of NECA, this is the stories you must have heard.
Yeah.
And I think we've all got stories of friends who were in exile, and you hear about the trauma, but we don't have this conversation enough, or even understand, as we all Namibians in the same, generation, but yet you had completely different life experience, and then coming back to integrate into society as if nothing happened.
Yeah.
Here's your father, here's your mother, and if you know them, good for you.
Yeah.
And if it's the first time you're meeting them, then go at it.
Yeah. Personally, I met my mother when I was 7, and somebody just said, that's your mother. Oh, okay, right, thank you very much.
That was the only conversation.
That was a conversation, and I figured I had to remember, okay, she sounded like this. She spoke like a Mbalantune. It kind of sounded like some wavering stuff. And she had the what are this?
11.
Yeah. So I could identify with her, and she was big, so I identified it was my mother. Yeah. It was really, really difficult. But you see, what was interesting also, I want to talk about the stratification or the class strata of children of the liberation struggle, where he goes to say, you are in this solidarity grouping, but the one person, your friends, my friend, our friend, is Nakushe Kapofi, for example, you understand? And then the other friend is, who can I use? Maybe the mother was a cleaner, because she didn't get an opportunity to study, not because she didn't want to study, but her job in exile was to take care of kids. So she stayed in the camp because somebody had to take care of the kids, you understand?
So in exile, you're all coming from like an equal level playing field, sort of.
Yes.
And then you come back home, and then there's just this inequality.
Exactly.
But we're all still friends. But I'm from Havana, and you're from Eros.
Yes. But somehow life then re-stratifies you, because now you can't exactly, we grew up in Sederhof and all of that. But I want to go specifically Pio and myself, because another interesting thing that he talks about is the portrait that made me cry. The portrait, like when the family, because it boils down to what I want to talk about, what we're talking about, but let's make an example of us here. He talks about the portrait, he got up and he was cleaning the yard, and the family, which is his father, his stepmother, and the brothers, they go to town. That's what was happening in our houses as well, do you understand? That was what's happening. I don't care if my dad and my stepmother went to town with the kids, I really didn't mind. Surely it indicated in the book that he didn't mind. But
so just to clarify, Popyeni moves in and lives with his father and his stepmother and his 2 brothers who are then half-brothers.
Yes.
But then you are not treated as an equal, is that fair to say, an equal member of the family because you have a different mother.
Yes.
So they take a family photo in which you are not a part of.
it's not even that they took a family photo, they went to town. You see, town was the in thing. Every Saturday you must go to town because you are guaranteed to come back with something. So they went to town and, I'm sure they got groceries and, they had ice cream as well. But then on top of that, they come back with a big portrait of the family. And they didn't have to say anything. The family portraits literally told you that you are not part of the family. Now, the reason why I cried myself, basically, I called him and I said, do you want us to go beat up your dad? Because your dad deserves a beating. It's because my dad and his dad work in the same job. They do the same thing, But there's one thing that my dad always made sure. My dad made sure that he protected me from his new family. He has always said, everybody found you here. You were, you were here before anybody else. If you're gonna get something, they're not gonna be portrait. Do you understand? If we're gonna be portrait, they're gonna be Benita's picture, my sister's picture, and then my parents' picture maybe at their wedding. Do you understand? I was never made to feel. If I went to my dad and I said, my sister beat me up, my dad's gonna beat me up because he says, she found you here and you are older. Nobody has any right to. My dad protected me. Pio's dad allowed somebody else to do whatever that he wanted to do to him. But what I love about is human, on the basis of everything that was done to him, was supposed to be angry. We were angry on his behalf. But he comes out and say, but I'm not even angry at her. I am just angry at him for not protecting me. Everybody else would be angry at her, do you understand? Because she's the one who was doing everything. But then he says, no, I understand what she had to do. But he should have protected me.
And not only that, 2000, your family goes off to live in the United States.
Correct.
You are then a self-funded student. 2001, they come back. You have found yourself a job. You found a way to sustain yourself. And then you become a contributing member of the household that essentially rejected you.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about that, because I think that's where the one would maybe say that's where the customer service element is just in you, because I just want to understand how much of this is innate in you that you were just going to serve regardless.
Yeah, I think the working at Spur was a blessing for me, because when you work at a restaurant like Spur, which was then the most popular family restaurant, in keyword family restaurant. We were even taught, like when you're as a waiter, you were told, when you see a family coming, that is when your potential of getting tips come in. Because as a family, if the kids are happy, the parents are happy, it's easy for you to make money from there. So I saw these all the time. Now here I am, living on my own, my family nowhere. I'm renting in Khomasdal at the time. I mean, that's now after high school. And I see a family come in. I'm supposed to treat them a certain way. Like, hey, hi, welcome. So already, that's already implanting on what a family should be, on how you should be. And obviously, you can't even tell the difference if that is a stepchild or, or stepmother. So all you know is that it's a family. So already I craved for that. So I understood that, and I also talk about it in the book, sorry, my wife, that I dated a girl at the time who was also very Christian. And she was Catholic, and she understood me, and she was really telling me about, just forgiveness and, good things come in. So that helped me, because when my family came back, again, I saw a family coming to Spur, and all I wanted was to serve. All I wanted was to be, finally, I'm going to be part of a family that I didn't have, and we can go out. That's why when my brothers and I became very tight, I used to take them to Spur. And then we were the customers. So that, again, put my mindset in terms of, okay, this is how service is. So we'll go to another place, for example, and I can easily identify the fault in a waiter. And that allowed me to serve people. I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's really about that. So you have to be placed in a certain environment for your mindset to change. It's not just it happened. So for me, that's how I went past everything that has ever happened in the past, because of my engagement with different types of people. And I was very close to Benita as well. I knew Benita's household. I used to go there after school. I know the father. I knew the stepmother. I knew the sister. So I was in a family home. So for you to now judge others, it was just not in me at the specific time. Yeah.
You know, this book is very, it's written so holistically because it encompasses everything. But let's go to the subheading, Growing Beyond a Job Description. And Veronis, I think we all know in Namibia, I think, and Popyeni said it, changing of a mindset.
Yeah.
We are so very much stuck to, this is my job description. How does one grow beyond a job description? If I think, and I know I'm taking the populist opinion, but I know, and I've heard friends say that this is what I'm tasked to do, this is what I'm remunerated for, and so how do you get to the mindset of, let me try to go beyond this?
So I think it is a tough question, and having read the book, I couldn't really find that answer either. But there was some probing into it that people nowadays, I mean, the world has changed so drastically, right? It's all about what can I have, what can I show, and that all comes from earnings. So if my job description doesn't allow me to probably be able to afford beyond what I get, I'll probably never want to do more, that extra mile that everybody talks about. It has to be accompanied by things like training, perhaps, influence, being around certain people, right-minded sort of people. Just this week I read something about, let's stop reading about success stories. Let's read about the failures so that in itself can prompt you to want to be successful. Because every book that you read nowadays is about, how to do this, how to do that, how to do this. But I think from my space, coming from a corporate space, is that, there's people want more. They always want more, but they're not willing to give more. And no matter how much training you give them, no matter how much you encourage them, no matter how much you preach and scream, it never seems to go beyond that job description. So if I take one extra step, how much are you going to give me for that, right?
Yeah.
If I go see a client, okay, my job description says I don't see clients, I must just sit at the desk. If I go see a client, I'm using my fuel, right? It's wear and tear on my car. There's all these things. There's always a little bit about this. And I think it also speaks back to passion. It also speaks back to wanting to serve. I mean, reading some of me and Popyeni, actually, I also worked at Spur, by the way. I was also, and having heard you now say about, that family, when the family comes in, you want to serve them. I mean, there were some kids I wanted to take home because, they grow to love you I don't know if I treated them better than their parents did, I don't know. But, but it was interesting to see the joy that you bring to a child by serving them. And it's children, right? We often expect children to serve us as adults or whatever the case is, but serving a child and seeing them smile and not wanting to go home. I don't know how many times kids didn't want to leave Spur because of however you treated them. So always that thing of the extra mile. What is the extra mile going to cost me to serve? And people often forget that. Look, in an organization like FNB, for example, where I work, it's just a building, right? The people are FNB. So if we do not go beyond the extra mile, if we do not get out of this thing of job description and go slightly beyond to find satisfaction for yourself. I mean, I get happy when a customer is happy. I get happy when a client calls me back tomorrow and says, hey, you were brilliant. Is there anything else you can do for me? Or, it gives you joy. It gives you passion. It makes you want to do more. It makes you want to learn more. Because by learning, you only know what you don't know, right? And it's, again, I'm not sure if that's also an answer, but I think you have to look within and say, what do I want out of life? And I think that's what Popyeni did. I mean, all those stories you just told, I think I was also born in Angola, but I think the better side, I didn't know I was going to be a soldier. I think the better side of Angola, and all that trauma stuff and the 3 Rs, I never went through that experience, because family was always we were okay, sort of, you know.
Yeah.
So I never had to experience that. But my wanting to do, me going to work at Spur, for example, it wasn't necessary. We were fine. Lived in Panias Park. Mom and dad worked. There was money in the house, but I wanted to. All right. I think for Popyeni it was slightly different. You know,
Yeah.
he probably didn't have a choice. You probably didn't have a choice, or it was a combination of want and having to. Right. So, yeah, those are the different experiences. So it's all about choice for me as well. At the end of the day, you know, what do you want to get out of life?
So Karen, we've spoken a lot about like looking within, and if we had to have an honest conversation about customer service in Namibia, I even worked at a company where people would say, you know, Dasime Master Company Dini. You know, you hear that phrase so often, like, this is not my mother's company, I'm not going to do more than I have to. So how much does purpose and passion have to do with growing beyond a job description?
Absolutely. I think it's got a lot to do with it. I think about the part in the book where Popyeni talks about he is working as Chico the Clown at Spur. That was his entry point. Then he looked at those waiters with such like just like vision. He had a vision. He said he liked the way that they moved. He liked the way that they looked, the way they dressed, just the way that they sort of commanded the space inside the restaurant. He saw something in them that he wanted. And so that was like his vision, even just from where he was as Chico the Clown. So I think that everyone, where they're at, it doesn't matter where you're at, look and see what inspires me, who inspires me. And like Popyeni was putting himself in the
There's a mic.
From with the mic?
Popyeni was putting himself into the place of where he wanted to be, but he was doing it in his mind first. So he had a vision, but he didn't wait until he was out of a position that wasn't necessarily what he wanted to do. So he was very present. I always say that all of your power is in your present moment. So when you are fully yourself and doing the best that you can, no matter what position you're in, no matter what you're doing, you will be the first to be looked at for a raise. You'll be the first to be looked at for a promotion, because they see what you can do with what you have where you are right now. And so I saw that in Popyeni, that he fully embodied with passion what he was doing, no matter what it was. And then he always was looking, what's my next step? He didn't look to, I want to be manager next. He just said, what's my next step? And made it possible for himself, and took small steps to get there.
So Popyeni, let's try to bring this back to what we had spoken about before off air with Varanis as well. How do we get to the solutions? Because we've spoken a lot about passion, people looking within, because we need to take this country to the next level in a different place. And I think we all know as Namibians, it takes each individual person to introspect for us to get this country to where we want it to be. So how do we get there as a people and as individual? If I'm working a dissatisfied job, I don't feel purpose, but I hear this conversation and I'm like, okay, I want to get on board. How do I self-improve? Where do we go from here?
Yeah. I think, firstly, a lot of, after writing the book, most of the feedback that I received from people is individual stories. Everyone had a story to tell when they read the book. They could all give me a different perspective, not necessarily on the book, but about their life. And what that tells me is that we each have a story to tell. We each have a viewpoint on how things should be done. And yeah, on viewpoint, sorry, my phone, I don't need to use this. Okay. Yeah, and a different perspective on how things need to be done. What that's telling me further is that for a very long time, I think Namibia is a country where we're waiting for the president to tell us. It's like you're waiting for someone to tell us what to do. We want a solution. That's all we want. We want someone to tell us a solution. But what I did differently in the book is I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to paint a picture of what's happening based on my experience, based on what I've seen. Look at that. Let's create another. From that, let's create more conversation, and build on it. Now, because once we identify what is our problem, do we know ourselves? The Bible even tells you, know thyself. But I don't think a lot of us know ourselves. We might think we know. It's sort of like when I wrote the book, I had to go in depth. I had to remember things that I thought I had forgotten. As a country, we don't know what our potentials are until somebody comes and tells you, you know what? Did you know that you can advertise your business on Facebook? But it's right there.
Right.
So what I want us to do from here is that I want us to be able to read it and know, get to ourselves, understand ourselves first. We don't understand ourselves as a country. We don't understand our potential. We only know that there is a government, there is organizations, there is the president must tell us what we must do. But we have to find ourselves first, and then only can we find solutions.
Thank you so much. We have to, before we even go, we have to get into the conversation just very briefly, especially with regards to the youth, because I mean, they're the majority of the work market at the moment. And we've got now the situation in Namibia where we've got all these graduates that are coming out of these universities and institutions with certain expectations. And you described the situation at DHL. I now have my qualification. I expect X amount, and somebody who may have experience but is not qualified, therefore deserves less than me. What about youth and the expectations in the job market? I mean, you work a lot with the youth, Benita. If you were to motivate or have anything to say to the youth today entering the job market, what would that be?
Well, I used to work with the youth, not anymore. Now it's young adults. I think it starts with government, right? A person who reads a lot and I find joy in research and trying to assist others as well. And because we have been given an opportunity to do that, like so many other kids from exile that haven't come back with their parents, I give gratitude, and I'm grateful to God that I came back with both my mom and my dad, and that I've had the opportunity to have a dad who was able to get me through the structures to a point where I became my own person. But now I felt somehow the need to give back to those whose parents had not returned. And by doing that, went back to look at the premises of plan, of SWAPO. What was it? What was the defining point of those who the decision of those whose blood waters our freedom? You see, what were the premises that were there that the SWAPO-led government gave to these people to say, you know what, I'm willing to die for this country so that my child, and my wife and my mother and whole family member could live a better life. And those are some of the things that kind of pushes us back to see how can we help those that did not get the opportunity. And this is now to say, if you look at the youth, the restructuring of the Ministry of Youth, it begins with that. We need to restructure the ministry so that ministry can create policies that can work to serve the youth.
So it's in your opinion that maybe the youth is dealing with a lot of unfulfilled promises?
Yes. They're dealing with unfulfilled promises because the policies are not right. They are not serving the need of the youth. You have a ministry that cannot even give you a database of how many young people are employed or not employed. You have they cannot create agricultural plans, for example, for young people who are unable to find jobs in the formal market. Banks, agreements perhaps between the Ministry of Youth to create some sort of collateral agreement so that they can access funding from banking, the banking sector, with minimum interest rate. So for me, it begins with the policy. Let's set the policies right so that the youth can also tap onto that. But then again, it also boils down to individualism. People need to make decisions, you see. We need to find our niche in life. What is it that we want? Like I'm reading the Rick Warren's book on the purpose, how to live a purposeful life. What is it that you want? You need to find your purpose. You need to find that which you love the most, and then you run with it, like Popyeni did with customer service. So basically, it's the system must create opportunity for us to engage, but equally the same, we should also showcase the need to want to gauge from that which is being created. So it's a two-way situation.
The book packs a punch. There were so many themes that I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface. That's how in-depth this book is. So just to close off, I always have to ask, once you've finished reading a book and you've completed reading it, what would have been your biggest takeaway? Let's start with you, Veronis. What was your biggest takeaway from reading this book, Let's Work?
Okay, for me, 2 words, and that's resilience and pure determination. I think what Popyeni did is amazing. I'm sure there are similar stories that we don't know of, but we're glad that this one is written, and we can take from that. I think also, you know, just not giving up. You know, life knocked you down. You remind me that I work with one of my colleagues. He's also been knocked down a few times, and he's still standing. I refer to him as the Rocky Balboa of my time. So yeah, you're like that Rocky Balboa of my time, because, I mean, like I said, some of the stories, especially your own personal journey, resonates with me, because I went through some of those things. But again, I didn't know I was training to be a soldier. So it's amazing how I survived, not knowing that there were people faced with much harder times than I was. And just, you know, your resilience to go through life, and that finding that purpose. Because if you do not know who you are, and I like how you put it, you know, if you do not know who you are, how will you know what your purpose is? You know, the definition of purpose starts with you. Why am I here? What is it that I want to do? And what is it that I want to achieve out of life? It's sad that as a child, you weren't, or maybe all of us, you didn't decide to be here. So you couldn't say, okay, this is what but you're here. Right? You slept at Marua Mall at the time. I mean, a principal who told you your school fees is not paid, unfortunately you can't. And I mean, just that determination to say, okay, just hold on a minute, let me quickly go and make a plan. And you came back with a plan, and it was a legitimate plan. You did not become a criminal or, you know, whatever. The fact that you still did life the right way, you know, that is just, it's beautiful, it's awesome. But I have a question for you. Did you not want, and you spoke about the way you loved your brothers, no matter how much your mom ill-treated you or whatever the case is. But having had that trauma, I mean, didn't you want to fight your brothers as a guy, you know, no matter how difficult it is, you know, because it's not easy. I can't imagine how difficult it was for you. But yeah, I don't know, you can answer now offline or whatever. But yeah, just the fact that you survived, wanting to survive, that is my take out on the book.
Answer the question.
No. My brothers were very young. I knew they didn't understand what was going on.
Okay.
Even when they read the book, now we have conversation. It's like, what? And I think many of us go through that when you have when you step, like, you don't really. It's again about what I mentioned. Know thyself. I know what myself. Whatever you went through, if we had disputes, I know where I stand.
Having read the book, you seem to have had like a lot of empathy at a very young age. To say that you understand, you know, your stepmother had her ideal family and you didn't fit into that picture. To be 17 and to have that kind of empathy, that is insane. Karen, what was your biggest takeaway for you from reading the book, Let's Work?
Gosh, so much, but I think the biggest one was that everyone can use their life to whatever they've been through to create something good and become a force for good in the world. And I think that Popyeni is really wanting, you know, with this book, he's wanting to, I think Popyeni with this book is really wanting to create some good in Namibia through customer service, but also just really showing that whatever it is you've been through, that you can take that and actually that becomes part of your magic. Using whatever you've been through as part of your story, your vision. And when people go, I don't know what my purpose is, I don't know what my vision is, you actually do. It actually is in your heart. It is in there. And know thyself. If you look within, you will find all the pieces will start to come out, and it will be part of those pieces will be what your history is.
Yeah.
Planning to close off, what is it that, having written the book, what did you want people to resonate with the most? What conversations did you want them to start having in their homes, in their workplaces, corporate, government, business, children who were born or were taken into exile? What conversation did you want this nation to have?
Yeah, I think what I really wanted was work ethic. I wanted us to have a conversation on work ethic because I feel that's what's missing in Namibia. Because we're quick to complain that foreigners are taking jobs in Namibia, but foreigners have a work ethic that I think we need to adapt. Either we need to adapt or we need to find and bring forth. And Namibia is a country that came from work. We literally we were workers, but once we got independence, we became too comfortable. I feel there was a comfortability even from the leadership position. Even the leaders, they were unionists, they were soldiers. Now they get into this position, and for you to even have a meeting with this person who has even studied, people who have studied PhD, but it's difficult. But there's just that the level of skills and education, and the knowledge to transfer that knowledge down to the person underneath. There's just that gap. So how do we bring that forth? How do we bring that culture back? How do we become like the next China, for example?
Sure.
So I'm hoping that from a book like this, if you are a student and you just finished school with your degree, that you need to think, okay, if I don't get a job, what do I do now? Should I focus on the fact that I've got my degree? I deserve. Do I deserve, or do I need to go and pursue? Perhaps the pursuing and the deservedness. That's yeah. So it's really about work ethic. That's why I want you to read this book and think, you know what? I can do more.
And I think having read the book, definitely it speaks to work ethic. It speaks to the pursuit of excellence. It speaks to, do I really just want to go to my workplace and just be my job description? It speaks to character. Like, who do I want to be as an individual, and bring that in with me? With that said, I think we're out of time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So let's get this out first. The book is still available to purchase, and 100% this is a book that every single Namibian should read, in whichever level, on whichever journey you are on, whether you're finding your path in life, whether you've lost your path in life. This is a book that will, I think, set you on a path to the pursuit of excellence. Popyeni, I have to thank you so much for having written this book that I think is going to change the mindset of many Namibians at the moment.
You.
And thank you to my guests.
pleasure.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Benita, Varanas, as well as Karen, for taking your time out this morning through the pages to have an in-depth discussion. I feel we only scratched the surface, but maybe we can have another conversation when you write book number 2.
Oh, yes, definitely.
That was Through the Pages. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. The book is still available, and you will find all the links on
Yes.
the Let's Work
Commercial Group.
commercial group on Facebook to get the details.